In Japanese music, I know people say Shakuhachi's dying, Shakuhachi's dying. It's really not. It is not known, but at the same time, it's all over the place in our media. Ghost of Tsushima, anime things, pop music, jazz, The Last Samurai. Now you're in the middle of the Edo period Japan. It brings you there right away. If it died, it would just break my heart.
Hey there, and thank you for tuning in. We're excited to bring you another great conversation today. If you like the show and want to support us, please hit the subscribe button so we can keep bringing you great content week after week. And if you're feeling extra generous, give this video a like and share your thoughts and comments down below. Thank you so much. And now, let's get into it. Welcome to Unpacking Japan. I'm Tobi, and today we welcome Shawn, Honorary Grandmaster of Shakuhachi, a traditional Japanese flute. Thank you so much for coming.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
You came all the way from Nara today,
Yes.
Where you are currently based,
Yes.
and you brought with you some very beautiful, very ancient, and for some of them very expensive flutes. And I'm very curious to kind of find out more about the history of these pieces and how you play them, but also how you got into that in the first place. So maybe let's start there. What brought you to Japan in the first place?
So part of the genesis of this story is also just how I got into music. And music was always the only thing that I was really good at. You know, I didn't do really well in school in terms of like even language courses, history, or anything. I just wasn't ever really interested. The only thing I ever wanted to do was music. So when I was really young, my sister bought me a guitar for Christmas, and like all I would do is I couldn't play anything except for just strum and just make cacophonous sound. But that's what I liked doing. Same thing with piano stuff. I didn't take any formal lessons or anything like that. I just loved playing music. So when it came time where I was able to do something in school, when it was like string music and stuff like that, I went into that field. And as a part of being into all of this classical music, I fell in love with composition. And all of these things led up to me going to university to pursue a degree in violin and viola performance and composition and music theory. But during that time, I had a back injury that just prohibited me from playing violin. So I stopped playing violin and viola completely, and I just focused on composition. But the life of a composer can be really lonely, right? You sit in a room with a piano for most of the time by yourself, writing notes on a page, and then you only get to meet with other musicians and collaborate when there's a commission or when there's some sort of performance happening. And so I wanted to work with other people a lot more. And so I was looking for another instrument. And while I was at university, I heard the sound of the shakuhachi, and it was something that was so familiar to me because I grew up watching animes where I heard it. It's all throughout Hollywood. You hear it not just in samurai films, but even things like Jurassic Park and different other Hollywood films use the sound. So it was so familiar to me, and that's what I wanted to learn. And then just one thing led to another, and I just fell more in love with it, and I could actually play quite well. And then there it was. I wanted to have a career. So as I continued my studies, I finished my master's certificate right around the time I graduated from the university. I started doing a career in America. And then when COVID hit, I had a choice. I could just wait for the reset in America and continue there, or I could move over to Japan and start afresh there. And that's what brought me to Japan.
So you kind of discovered Shakuhachi when in the States, and you didn't have any particular strong interest into Japan before that, but then the interest kind of grew from music.
I would say that the primary thing was being involved in martial arts and loving anime, loving especially like old jidaigeki, like all of those samurai films, all of that stuff in tandem with my love for music is what really brought me to wanting to do something like the shakuhachi.
It's a pretty unique niche instrument, I would say. It's not
Absolutely.
that known, especially overseas. How did you heard the sound of it, but how did you kind of get into finding a way to learn it while still in the United States?
And that's what's so, like the Japanese say, it's very fushigi about this instrument, so mysterious, is that it is not known, but at the same time, it's all over the place in our media. And you wouldn't even realize it until you think of like Shinobi 3 on Sega Genesis, or Okami has a Komoso character in it, Ghost of Tsushima, and so on and so forth. Like it is in our culture actually quite a lot, and we do see the instrument. It's just not known by name. So another way of thinking about this is like everybody knows the Messiah, the big operetta, or that gets sung every Christmas. But then you ask who wrote it, and no one knows the composer, but everybody knows the piece, and that's kind of how I feel like how Shakuhachi is. When I bought a Shakuhachi, what I did is I just did researches of all the top universities in Japan, and I said, okay, there's Tokyo Geidai, there's Tokyo Ondai, there's Senzo Gakuin, and all these other universities. I'm just going to write to the professors and see if anybody will take me as a student. So I got together with one of my Japanese friends while I was living in the States, and we were just writing out emails and letters. Actually, the emails at that time weren't public, so I had to do it by snail mail. Oh, wow. So I wrote out a letter and then sent it off to them, and then I got an email back from one of the professors, and one of the people was Kaoru Kakizakai, and he was my first teacher who got me started into playing traditional Japanese music.
So for people not familiar with this, what exactly, how do you qualify, how do you define a shakuhachi? What is it compared to, let's say, other flutes?
So this would be an air reed. So the reason why it's called that is because it has just basically it's just a large hole, and it's a large hole with just the blowing edge on it, and so you can call it an air reed or an in-blown flute. But there's no like mechanism here in which makes it so it's not like a whistle, because there's not like just a blowing apparatus attached to it. There's no like reed that gets placed against the instrument. It's just hitting the bamboo directly. So that would be an air reed instrument.
And it has to be made out of bamboo.
It has to be made out of madake for it to be like under the strictest sense of the name of the instrument being a shakuhachi. Traditionally speaking, it's made out of madake bamboo. But there are other people who use different types of bamboo, also different materials like carbon fiber, different types of plastics, and so on and so forth.
Does the name shakuhachi, does it have a specific meaning?
Yes, it does. So the name actually comes from the size of the instrument. So the original was ishaku hasun. So that's ishaku is the measurement from your elbow to your wrist. And then the sun is the first digit of your index finger. So it ends up being like 33 centimeters, 33.03 and 3.03 centimeters. So now it has more of like a defined size to it. But the older shakuhachi was actually ishaku hapun, which is another smaller like measurement quality. So they both actually are 1.8 or 1.08, and that I means 1, shaku is the measurement, hachi is 8, and then sun is the other measurement length. So shorten it, shakuhachi.
So you reach out by snail mail to the professor, and he gets back to you. Mm-hmm. But you're in the US. I can imagine that at that time, it might not have been easy to, first of all, get your hands on it, but also to learn without having someone next to you to teach you how to use something that's so specific.
Yeah, and this is just over 10 years ago, and it's amazing how much has changed. And so just being able to get a good shakuhachi at that time was really difficult. You had to go through a teacher, or you had to have some sort of reputable salesperson who had a collection. And a lot of times the prices could be, all over the place, and you don't know what you're getting. And there's no quality control or how to, know that you're getting a good instrument unless you're going through your teacher. So my first instrument was like abysmal. It was a very, very difficult instrument to play. And then my second instrument was a plastic instrument, and that was a little bit better. But it wasn't until, a couple of years afterwards that I actually got something that was, very usable. And as far as lessons went, they were on Skype. So Skype highly compresses all the audio. So there's no dynamic, sensibility whatsoever, and the tonal variations of the flute too are lost a lot. So that it was very hard to do a lot of lessons like that because you lose so much.
But you knew you want to keep doing this.
Absolutely.
This is the past. What was it about this flute that made you want to?
It's the sound. It's so intoxicating.
Can you demonstrate for us?
Absolutely. So just like they have this practice called robuki, which means to blow the lowest note of the instrument. And just like the rich timbral quality of the instrument, and that like the depth of the sound it just grabbed me, and that's like that intoxicating element of it.
That sound you just played for me kind of reminded me of something you might hear where they sound this and then they start the drums and then like, I don't know, the army's preparing in a battle movie, samurai
like
movie.
let's say, for example, to bring it back to Hollywood, in the film score of The Last Samurai, you'll hear this sound a lot. Like that kind of sound. It's very, very common in that film score. Another one too, right before fight scenes, sometimes you'll hear something like this. So those type of elements also. What's really interesting is it's not that the sound is very cool, right? That's without a doubt, but the power that it has to say, now you're in the middle of the Edo period Japan. It brings you there right away in just that one simple sound in a couple seconds.
Is this where the instrument originated, Edo period?
It actually comes even prior to that, but to get to this instrument, the one that I was just using, that doesn't come along until the late Meiji era, until like all the developments, the wider open holes, thicker bamboo, louder sounds. The older instrument actually looked like this. So this would be something that was common in the Edo era. So the way you can see is that like the bamboo is thicker, and then that's not to say that all of the instruments in the Edo period were thin. Some of them were thicker, but the hole size was definitely smaller. Also, the bore size was smaller too. They also had a different way of crafting the instruments. In addition to that, right before that was this instrument, which is it was also called the Shakuhachi before this, but after this instrument came in, its name changed and it became the Hitoyogiri. So, but this one would be from the Muromachi period, even to maybe like late Heian, but more like Muromachi period.
So you're taking lessons over Skype and you're trying to play an instrument with distortions and it's kind of not going so well. Corona happens and you kind of eventually have to decide, okay, what do we do, right? And you decided, I'm coming to Japan and you're going full time with this. How was it like?
I went full time prior to that. So in like the what I call my Skype era, right? I was taking lessons with 2 teachers, and then I switched to another teacher who I worked with primarily for 4 years. Very intensely every single week, taking lessons nonstop. I even visited him at his home to take lessons in person as well. And at that point, when that finished, that was 2016 when I had my master's certificate, and I had graduated from the Cleveland Institute of Music. Then from there, I decided that I wanted to try to make a career out of shakuhachi. So I went kind of some very interesting routes too. So not to digress too much, but I actually went back and taught violin and viola, and I was even a high school orchestra director for about a year.
Cool.
And so and then that basically became my way of financing to start my career as a full-time shakuhachi player, and only doing that. And so then at that point, I did about 3 years of just solid performance, and or about maybe even 4 years of just solid performance work only on the shakuhachi, where I was based in Texas. Then Corona hits, and then I come to Japan.
What was it like coming to Japan, the place where this instrument is from, and kind of maybe meeting some masters that are based here, and you eventually decided on settling in Nara? Was there a reason for that too?
So it wasn't my first time coming to Japan. I had been coming to Japan multiple times a year for 10 years. And so a lot of the masters I've already met. They were friends of mine. I've taken lessons with them. I had a relationship with a shokunin, someone who makes these instruments, who lives in Tokyo. So actually coming to Japan, there was a lot of people who were very happy that I was here. And, we were able to hang out more, do more things together. But the difference from visiting to living was I could actually just enjoy things and go and say, look, I don't have to worry about being back at my house at this time or whatever. I don't have to worry about catching a flight. I can just go to Kyoto and say, well, let's just stay here at this hotel for a week or so, and let's just explore things. Let's go meet these people. Let's go take this lesson. Let's go experience this thing. So the mindset of I can actually absorb things more slowly and more organically rather than forcing them in a short little mini excursion.
You're now by title honorary grandmaster.
Yes.
What does an apprenticeship look like for someone who gets into shakuhachi?
So there are part of the the old samurai system was the guild system. And so within there, you would get Shoden, Chuden, Okuden, Jun Shihan, Shihan, Dai Shihan, and then, honorary titles after that. And, within the Shakuhachi world, it's different between every teacher. So sometimes it's just a set of pieces. Sometimes it's doing certain performances or doing certain things. Sometimes it's, like, for example, there's not like a test to get a grandmaster title. It's more about, are you teaching shakuhachi? Are you making a change and a difference in the shakuhachi community? Are you doing things that are, making the instrument more popular? That would earn you a daishihan rather than just having a regular old master certificate, which would be fulfilling all of the necessary requirements for knowing a certain amount of pieces and so on and so forth. So the apprenticeship can look very different. In some cases, the teacher will give you a piece and then they'll say, just play it 1,000 times. Okay, now the piece is done, right? In other cases, it's people do a very technical analysis of your playing and fix things.
Is there a specific method to learn, like a curriculum where new people that are getting into this start in the master? Like, no, first you have to do this 1,000 times, as you just...
Yeah, and so in some cases, like for example, in the Myoan tradition, which is one of the temples in Kyoto, they do a lot more of like the highly repetitious, playing the piece multiple times in order to, receive a certificate saying like you've learned these set of pieces. But from what I understand, the Myoan school doesn't have Shoden, Chuden, and all this stuff. All they have is what's called Menkyo Kaiden or Kaiden, which is basically saying that you have fulfilled all requirements and now you are allowed to transmit this teachings in this school's way of playing to another person. In like the Kinko school, they have multiple rankings. The Tozan school as well, they have multiple rankings and how that goes. And again, every school and every teacher has once they're at that the Shihan rank or the Dai Shihan rank, they have the freedom to create their own curriculum with the materials that they have.
What school did you kind of join?
So my school is Chikushinkai, or the Dokyoku school, which was founded by Watazumi Doso and then championed by Yokoyama Katsuya. And then my lineage goes Yokoyama Katsuya and Taniguchi Yoshinobu, Taniguchi Yoshinobu is the one who gave me my honorary grandmaster title. And then that goes through my primary teacher, who was Michael Chikuzen Gould. And then he taught me from the absolute beginner level all the way up to the master's level.
You mentioned your primary teacher having also like a sort of assigned Japanese name. Mm-hmm. You've also gotten one.
Yes.
What is it and how do you obtain this name? What does it mean?
So the name that I have is Tairyu, which means great dragon. The name that the person who gave me this name has is Ryudo, or Ryudo. And that Ryu character is the dragon character. And so the usual format of how name giving goes is that you receive one name from your one of the characters from your teacher, and then you get one character that describes yourself. If I give something to my student, I might say that my student is Ryu-un, like dragon and clouds, someone who's maybe has a kind of an aloof personality, or someone who plays like the clouds, or maybe it's someone who's Ryu-ken, someone who studies like the dragon. And so it's sort of like that. So the Ryu is, I would say, more of the kind of the personality of the school, and then the other character would be the personality of that individual.
You mentioned the community and the different schools. How many people play the shakuhachi today, let's say professionally, and are kind of trying to perpetuate this tradition?
If you would have asked this question 10 years ago, it would be a lot easier to answer it because there was a sort of like, informal census that was taken. And I remember some people actually reaching out to me and asking about this. In that time, the number was quite small, but I have a very strong suspicion that the number is a lot bigger now. So it's very difficult to say, but I think with pretty, strong confidence, I could say that the instrument's more popular outside Japan than it is inside Japan. And I don't think it would be wrong to say there's more players outside Japan too.
That's interesting because I would have probably guessed the opposite because of it being so uniquely Japanese and the instruments also mostly being made here in Japan.
Yeah. And that's why it's hard to say, because like 10 years ago, it was flipped. But because of the games like Ghost of Tsushima and so much more of popular culture, easy access to all information online, I see a lot of more people just popping up who are playing Shakuhachi or are studying, and I just see the interest growing so much. So, it's not really a scientifically accurate answer, but just from my own world and how I see it, how many emails I get, my subscriber count going up, people joining my memberships and stuff like that, my students getting students. All of those things are increasing at a very rapid rate.
You said that back in the States already, you were like, I want to try to make a full-time career out of playing Shakuhachi.
Yes.
How did you envision this career? Was it about performing and going around? Was it
Yeah.
about becoming a grandmaster living here in Japan? Did you have an idea of what you want to do with Shakuhachi?
I knew that I wanted to get I wanted to get the grandmaster title. That was one of my goals. I wanted to earn that title by working really hard and promoting the instrument and building a really big YouTube presence, doing a lot of performances. The primary thing I wanted to do was I wanted to do a lot more performing and doing things with video games and film scores and stuff like that. But really where my path went is a lot more into the education side. So most of the work I do is teaching. I do perform quite a bit, but I would say, I work about 8 hours a day teaching Monday through Friday.
So is it like a typical kind of school where you have people coming in and they learn, or is it more like private lessons? How is Shakuhachi?
So there's two ways that I provide lessons. I provide lessons through a YouTube membership, so people can sign up and then they get videos that they can access and then learn all the material. They also get workbooks that come along with it, and so on and so forth. The second way I do is one-on-one lessons. People can either come to me in person or we can meet online. I use Discord because the audio fidelity is much higher, and so we can finally pick up those nuances. Better microphones. Things are so much cheaper now than they were 10 years ago. To buy a really good audio set 10 years ago, you're investing how many thousands of dollars? I mean, like even one of these mics. Like one of these mics is usually about $500 to $600. 10 years ago, good luck finding something like that has this level of quality.
But same with the flutes, right?
Oh, yeah.
Before we started recording, you kind of briefly gave me an overview of the cost of some of these flutes, which can go into the 5 digits, and we're talking US dollars.
Yes.
So for people that are getting into this, it's not a cheap hobby.
Well, it can be. It can be either cheap or it can be either really expensive. It just depends on how you want to go. So when people come to me and they want to learn shakuhachi, and let's say they have a plastic instrument and they want a real bamboo one, you can get a bamboo instrument that is fairly good quality for about $650 to $1,000. So it's the barrier to entry, and that might sound really expensive for some people, but I'm coming from the world of violin and viola, where the cheapest thing you're going to get is like $4,000. And that was just the instrument. You have to buy the bow, you got to buy the rosin, you got to buy the strings, then you got to buy the lessons afterwards. So the actual barrier to entry is a lot lower than other instruments.
So now you're teaching for the most part of your job, and you're promoting shakuhachi through social media and so on. Can you maybe dive a little bit more into like what are the steps? You have so many different flutes here, and someone new wants to start. What's the starting point with shakuhachi?
So, for example, basically the starting point would be something like this. So this is the Tairu Jinashi model. It's a beginner flute. It's a 3D printed instrument. It's made of carbon fiber.
3D printed.
3D printed.
Wow.
Yeah, and so this is one that actually came from. The instrument was made with bamboo first, and then my friend and I scanned it, and then we put it into the computer. We edited it, and made all of the different hole sizes and stuff like that how we wanted it. We printed it. Then he's the craftsman, fixed the hole sizes, cut the utaguchi, and he also put the Japanese lacquer on the inside. So something like this is, I think the price for this one's $329.99, and that's it's a fully functioning instrument, and you can use it for playing. And by the way, this is actually a personal gift to you. So your challenge is to try to learn the shakuhachi and then come back to me in a month or two and see how you do.
Wow. I have a feeling this is going to be very hard, but I think what we can try to do maybe at the end of this episode, I can try to get a note.
I would love that.
This is very generous. Thank you very much.
It's our pleasure.
I'm very curious now. You teach them. Are they all the same? Or what exactly are the differences between all those? Why is this one, for example, like twice the size as the others?
So the first thing is like the length of them, right? So if I hold up these two for your camera, this one is the standard size. It's a 1.8, and this one is called a 3.0. It's a sanjaku, and the primary difference is what is their utility, right? The 1.8 can pretty much do anything, right? It can play the classical music, it can play ensemble music, it can play contemporary music, minyo, which is folk music, children's songs, so on. The list goes on. The longer flutes tend to be ones that are used primarily for a genre called honkyoku, which is actually a kind of an interesting name because back in the day they didn't call their music honkyoku, they just called it kyoku. But we call them honkyoku because they're the original pieces that were for the instrument. And so a lot of times people like to use longer flutes for them because it does sound really nice to play some of those really earthy tones on a very deep flute. But if someone was getting started, they should get a 1.8. They should get the standard size instrument.
And so can you then play anything with it? Or is this, for example, specific for a certain type of music?
Now, this one here is a flute that does not have a hardening paste on the inside. So the sound is a little bit more colorful. And typically this would be used more for traditional music. Something like this one has the ability to do everything because it has a hard lacquer on the inside of the instrument. So the pitch and the power is a lot more consistent.
So we talked a bit about the journey and we talked a bit about the instrument. Now let's talk about the music itself.
Sure.
You gave us a brief overview earlier that it's commonly heard in some Hollywood movies, in some video games, and you kind of showed us the sound it could make, which was very familiar indeed. The songs for Shakuhachi, are they also all ancient? Are they composed many years ago and you just play like these traditional melodies that maybe accompany some traditional poetry, or what kind of music is?
And that is the $1 million question, because a lot of it's very hard to trace back this music in terms of, not even to just where it comes from, but when it comes from. Some of the music we have a better idea of how old it is, but in other cases, like for example, they say that there's this piece koku, and it's one of the 3 original treasures, and it's about 1,000 years old. No, it's not. That's an absolute lie. It's not true. I would be surprised if it was 150 years old, just because of the complexities of some of the melodic shapes and some of the different techniques that it incorporates. It's unlikely that it's going to be that old, but some of the pieces we do know that are a lot older, just because of whose hands it's gone through, and there's historical documents of people writing about the piece. That doesn't mean that the piece we have today, though, is the same as it was, 300 years ago either. So it's very, very difficult, and there actually is a way of researching stuff like this, but it just hasn't really been done to that much of an extent. In the Japanese music world.
If I'm thinking about a guitar, you can use it to play rock and roll, you can do country, you can use it for jazz. What about the Shakuhachi flute? Does it also have many different genres within this?
Yeah, we can play anything that we want. I've done things with Dirty South hip hop artist. I've done things for video games. I've done anime things. I've done pop music, jazz, funk, rock. It's a very versatile instrument.
So does it just like as part of a band you kind of fit in with this flute, and it kind of is one of the...
Yeah, I think there's like two kind of rock bands that do this. There's Heavenese and Wagaki Band, and they both have shakuhachi players, and they do hard rock, sometimes jazz, more pop. So there's definitely a range of artistic expression that can come from the shakuhachi.
What are things you like to play with it?
Oh, I like to play lots of stuff. I really love contemporary classical music. Being a person who went to conservatory, also as a composer, I love taking the pieces of Toru Takemitsu, for example. He has 3 solo flute pieces: air, itinerant, and voice. And I've played both air and itinerant, and voices on my list of things to also play. I also love commissioning composers, so I've commissioned over 20 different people to write new music for shakuhachi, and then I've premiered all of those and put those on a CD as well.
Would you use the typical note system to compose for?
We use when people write for me, they use standard Western notation, but we can use also So for example, here's like one of the scores that the composers wrote for me.
Okay.
It's called Echo. And so it's just standard, 5-line notation, staff notation there. But if I go to, let's say, one of the Honkyoku pieces, I'll just look at one of mine. So here it would be like, this is one of the stuff from my school, right? And so here's the scores that we use. And the scores here, see if I can make it a little bit bigger. There we go. So like they look like this. And this here is like read from top to bottom and right to left. And we use kind of like a tablature system. All of the characters are telling me what fingering to do, not what pitch to do. So that's why also like I can play this piece on any of these flutes and it will still make sense because again, it's based off the fingering, not off the individual pitch of whatever note's being shown here.
So I see, for example, here it says like a horo. Is it like a
horo,
horo, like the English horo? Like you kind of leave it
So
empty,
horo is a technique that it's an onomatopoeia. And so it's a sound effect that we get. And there are multiple variations of it. There's koro koro, goro goro, horo horo, uha goro. And so I'll just give you an example of some of those. So this would be the one that's written on this page, horo horo. Koro koro. Goro goro. Uha goro. So all these different sound effects. And what I like about it is that even though these are old techniques, they sound quite contemporary.
It sounds like, again, something you could have in a movie, like, I don't know, someone hiding in the bushes or something, and you have this little music that kind of accompanies.
Yeah, I like that uha goro. It always sounds like the kind of bubbly underwater sort of sound.
You mentioned that you also did music for like video games and so on.
Mm-hmm.
Which games and how did it kind of come to play?
There was an expansion pack done for one of the Crusaders games, and they had like an Asian world, and I did the Asian flutes for that. So I played Shakuhachi, Shinobue, Ryuteki, and some other instruments as well.
Also, if you can do one, you can relatively easily shift to the other type of Japanese flutes?
Not really. I can fake my way on like those other instruments, but I don't perform them publicly. That was a special circumstance where it was kind of one off, and I decided to play those other instruments. But yeah, that was one of the video games that I did.
To go back to the sounds you just made, these onomatopoeia sounds, it seems like there's a lot of work to do with the fingers and the vibration of the airflow. It seems very difficult to learn. What were some of the big challenges for you when you kind of got into this with a background in composing in viola?
Well, I think the thing is that you have a very difficult instrument, and if you don't already have a good ear and a good sense of rhythm, it just magnifies its difficulties. So for me, walking into the instrument, I already had many, many years of classical music training. So teaching me pitch and rhythm wasn't necessary. That was already something I knew how to do. I could hear music and so on and so forth. But I would say it's getting all of the nuances of the color. So in Japanese music, the focus is not necessarily on, well, there's two things. It's not necessarily important about what you're doing, but how you're doing it. And then the second thing is it's all about the color, not necessarily about the pitch. So we have ways of playing, like for example, this note. This note has a color, it has a texture to it, and the same exact pitch, but a different fingering. A very different color, a very different texture. And that's one thing that needs to be highlighted in a lot of the classical music.
It seems that the coordination of everything seems very tricky. And we were talking about the fact that it's an airflow instrument, right? So if anything is not done properly, the air will leak.
You can lose the sound quite easily.
Is this something that beginners or myself later, when I'll try this, will struggle with the most?
I think that just the barrier to entry is the hardest with making the sound. Once the sound is made, things become a lot easier over time.
So with you, going back to your training that you've gotten with your master, how was this process for you? Was it like a weekly session with them and you kind of went to the house and you...
Weekly hour sessions. And for me, it was a lot easier just because, again, I had a lot of musical experience. And so working with again, saying like, oh, you have this pitch problem, that was never really a conversation because, was conservatory trained and have all these oral theories that I had to take. Learning rhythm, there wasn't anything that I had to say like, oh, you don't understand dotted rhythms. And it's like, well, no, I that wasn't an issue. The thing for me was just being able to decipher the scores, because the scores act kind of like really shoddy blueprints. And so it's like if you're looking at a house blueprint, for example, and you're kind of going, wait, is that supposed to be a toilet or is that a pillar? and that's sometimes what happens in the Shakuhachi music. You go, is this in the first octave or the second octave? Am I supposed to do this fingering, or what does this actually mean? And there's sometimes where you'd have something in a score and then they'd say, oh yeah, but no one does that. We actually play it like this. So the score, it's like wrong, right? You have to just completely rewrite a portion of it.
And then you brought in your composing experience as well,
yes.
Right? And you started composing yourself.
Yes.
Did you compose the Western style, or did you compose like you just showed me?
Both. I've done both styles. So it also just depends on kind of like the voice of the piece. So if I want something a little bit more avant-garde, I tend to go towards the 5-line notation. If I want something that's going to be more in like the classical scales that Shakuhachi's known for, then I'll do it in the traditional notation.
And you also released an album, right? 2020 Bamboo.
Yes. So that was one of my older albums that was supposed to be released in 2022, but it got moved obviously because of Corona. And then I also released Tairyu Honkyoku 1, 2, 3, and 4 last year, which was a really huge project. It was a CD that each CD had 10 tracks on them. And of course, there was 4 of them, one for each season of the year.
Is this a common theme, like nature and seasons, that kind of comes up into these?
I find that nature is like a really strong inspiration for me when it comes to playing the instrument, because a lot of the names of the pieces too, like something like Daha, which is pounding waves, or Yamagoe, passing through the mountain, Takiochi, waterfalls, right? So this kind of theme of there's nature all over you. There's even pieces that have like the sound of cranes. So we have this piece called Suru no Sukumori, which means the nesting cranes, and inside the piece it has this effect. And so that kind of mimicking the sound of the crane crying, that sound before the koro koro, it can sound like like rocks falling down a hill. Or like the other ones, like the underwater sound. So all of these sort of things are very visceral of nature.
I'm super curious about how someone came up with the idea to cut a piece of bamboo and put it together in a way to kind of create these sounds. So that means there was.
Do you want a really fun story?
Yes, please.
Okay, I'll give you a fun story. So this instrument, the Hitoyogiri, is the older version of it, and there's a story in one of the historical documents from 1512 called the Taigensho. And inside it basically tells the story that there was this golden monkey in the mountains that used to sing, and it had this most beautiful voice, and people would go there and they would experience enlightenment from hearing the monkey, and they would quit their day jobs and their earthly passions and become monks. So the emperor got wind of this, and he's just like, look, I can't have this anymore, right? Someone go out there and kill the monkey. So they killed the monkey, and everybody was very sad, and they were burying the monkey and his femur. When they held it up, the wind, like a mysterious gust of wind, came by, which is a very common theme in many like esoteric tales of flutes. Comes by over the top of the over the femur, and it's like, wow, that kind of sounds like the monkey's voice. So they start drilling holes, and it becomes closer and closer to the monkey's voice, and that's how the birth of this instrument was said.
So not bamboo, but a monkey's femur.
But a monkey's bone.
That's the original story.
Yeah, and actually this is another instrument that my friend and I designed. Well, he designed it. I just promote it. But the name of this instrument is actually called the Monkey Cries.
Oh, kind of a gentle reference.
A very
to
gentle.
This one. It's noticeably smaller than most.
Yes.
But yeah. I've seen you grab mostly for this one here, which is also a very beautiful flute.
Yeah, this one also has a name to it too. This is kakume, which is the crying crane.
Is this like a name that the person who makes a flute will give its instrument? Like
it's one I gave it, and then I commissioned the artist to do the characters.
And each of them has a specific story you mentioned before we started recording about where it was placed and how that affected the bamboo or the bamboo's kind of condition, or this one being 300.
Yeah, that's what's fun about it, because like I for the longest time, this is called this type of bamboo here is called susudake. It's usually found in farmhouses above the like the dolma where they do cooking and stuff like that. It's the over hundreds of years of the family members cooking and having all the smoke rise up and hit the bamboo, it gives it this beautiful coloration. So lots of people use this kind of stuff for like pens or brushes or any sort of artistic thing that they want. So I was searching all over the place, and I was asking my shokunin, who makes all my flutes for me. It's like, I really want a real susudake flute, not like one that's just they can actually color the bamboo the same way they do smoked salmon. You put it in a smoker and then come back in a month and it's much darker. But like the real stuff is harder to get. And so I was traveling all over the Kansai region, and I finally found this bamboo shop in Kyoto who had just had the perfect piece. And so I bought it and I sent it off to him, and then it was made into a flute for me.
We always kind of end up coming back to those flutes. I feel like they carry a lot of presence and meaning behind the music. But if you go to the performances, you gave a lot of references to songs that are in video games and movies in Hollywood. What about like live performance? Where can people listen to Shakuhachi?
That's a tough one too. I think that in America, at least, you'll have opportunity at like a Japan festival. A lot of times they do invite somebody who's a practitioner who's in America, or maybe like if it's closer to call the guy in Canada, they will do that. But even in Japan, it can be kind of tough. You have to be basically really watch the hogaku stuff, the traditional music world. There is a Hogaku magazine, and there also is another location which is escaping my mind, but a lot of concerts are put up on there as well. I think it's much more likely to find performances in Tokyo and Osaka, and I actually know of many concerts that are going on, like next week, that are happening, but if you're not in the loop of it, it's hard to find. So
it's more like local venues, so like
it's local venues, and it's also just like the Hogaku community, right? The traditional Japanese world is a very tight knit community, and everybody knows everybody. And it does seem sometimes like it is hard to get in, and be a part of it.
But once you're in,
you're in, right? But then, I'll tell you one of the things that was just like the most like frustrating thing to me. So like let's say you want to go to this concert, right? And it's 22,000 yen to go. It's actually better to pay the ticket price rather than receive the ticket for free. And the reason why is because if you receive the ticket for free, then you're obligated, like unwritten rule, to bring gifts. And the gifts usually have to exceed the value of the ticket. So it's actually more expensive to receive it for free rather than just paying the ticket.
This is a typical Japanese.
This is a very Japanese way of doing it. So, I have a friend who gives out tickets for free like that, so he can get more value out of it. It's terrible, but like he's like, well, I really want to have a nice bottle of sake, so I'm going to give it out to these free tickets to my friend who runs a sake company, so they'll come and bring me some sake. And
the way of business.
The way of business.
Japan.
But I think that there's some of that in America too. Like if you give your friends a bunch of free tickets to come, a lot of people they'll bring you flowers, they'll bring you like little small trinkets. So it's not super foreign, but I think there's much more of like that social pressure in Japan you should bring some kind of nice gift that's equal or greater to the value of the ticket.
Where do you like to perform?
I like to perform in small venues, especially like temples. I really like that the sound of tatami. The sound of tatami with high ceilings is a very light resonance with the warmth of the tatami mats. Traditional concert halls are also very nice because you get this kind of boomy, very echo resonant sound, but I still think that kind of like those temple performances are my favorite.
Is this something you get to do regularly?
Yes.
That's nice. Is it for like religious kind of events where they will invite shakuhachi performance? Or
sometimes I've gone to like, villages that are small of like 1,500 people. And then other times I go to cities which are much larger. Like I went to, recently I went to Chita in Nagoya. It's right south of Nagoya. They're really famous for the Chita whiskey. And so when I went there, they had a concert hall for me, and it was actually like a 1,000-seat amphitheater, and that was a really nice performance. And then I've done other things where it was like small tea houses and there's like 5 people.
If people want to listen to you, the easiest way will be on your YouTube channel.
Yes, YouTube.
You've put on a lot of videos over the years, performing traditional songs, performed some of your songs, and kind of giving people a window into the world of Shakuhachi. You mentioned this YouTube channel earlier in our conversation as a way for you to teach, share, and kind of basically do the work of a grandmaster, which is to grow the community of Shakuhachi player. How did that kind of get started, this social media journey for you?
Well, one of the, I don't know if you've ever seen before kind of like this, there's almost like this pyramid of learning. And it basically says how do you basically learn materials and how you can digest stuff and so on. And so if you just hear something passively, it's like a 5% rate of what you're actually going to process and understand. If you talk about it, you double your chances of understanding it and being able to, talk about it in the future. If you read it, it's like 15%, and then so on and so forth. It keeps going up. But the number one thing that helps you to understand a material is to actually teach it. So one of the things that I went in to go, look, I'm just going to teach this. And, if I make mistakes, that's going to be my greatest way to learn from it. So even videos that I've made 6-7 years ago, like I know it's like, that's not right and whatever. But that was part of my learning experience. And I'd be able to say like, oh yeah, now I know way better than that because, I've been able to research and study and work with other Shakuhachi players and gain so much more knowledge from it. So really the YouTube channel was a start for, self-serving, because I wanted to be better. I wanted to put these pieces out so that I could hear myself back, and then also be able to go back and say like, oh, I've really improved a lot since, 2 years ago, 4 years ago, 5 years ago. And I can see my natural progression. And that's also like a kind of a confidence boost to say, yeah, I'm on the right path. I'm still improving. I can see myself getting better, and I have tangible proof of it too.
And you also mentioned social media as a way to now bring more popularity to this.
Yes.
How is it changing this kind of young community or kind of new?
I think that I'm getting a lot of younger people engaged in the Shakuhachi. So I have a very wide, age range. My youngest student is 18, and my oldest student is 76.
It's never too late.
It's never too late to start. And he started three years ago, and he plays actually quite well. He's a bagpiper by spirit. And he says, by the way, I never want to play Amazing Grace on a bagpipe again. He said it drives him. It says that's the number one thing. I will not play on bagpipes. It's so overdone. But that being said, he loves playing Shakuhachi, and he's getting really quite good at it too.
It's quite a change from the big bagpipe to the light Shakuhachi. Yeah. Social media, performances, composing, writing, teaching, you've done it all, so to say. But what are you working on now? What are your goals in this, in continuing to develop Shakuhachi?
So I even wrote a children's book too, that's based off one of the stories. It features my daughter, Shiloh, my first daughter. And it's that kind of crane piece that I played for you. And, so she's the naughty child crane who leaves home without telling her parents. Her parents freak out and try to find her. So that's called The Nesting Crane. So if anybody has children and they want something that's fun for their kids to read, that's Japanese music in Japan inspired, I would encourage checking that out on Amazon. But as far as like what I'm doing now, it's I'm building a team, and this is very very under wraps, like on the DL. Like I have a team of other Shakuhachi players that I'm working with to build a new society and a new kind of like, I guess we can call it like the new world order of Shakuhachi, right?
Sounds like you're kind of trying to go for a power grab.
But it's not that as much as I just want to build a community where people can find the support and the encouragement to continue with this instrument, because it really is difficult. But it shouldn't be that just because it's difficult that you shouldn't, persevere through it. And we know that people strive and do much better within a group. They continue to do things. They're more consistent. And to have a group of not I can't just be the only teacher. Right? I have to work with other people. And one of the people I work with is Nick Belando, who's up in Hirosaki, Japan, an incredible shakuhachi player and maker. And it's just an absolute pleasure to work with him and teach alongside him. And so I'm building kind of my dream team where of equals, and we all can, do festivals together, teach and perform and travel, and just, share our love for this instrument with the world, is because it's something that if it died, it would just break my heart. I would hate to see this instrument die. And I know people say shakuhachi's dying. It's really not. It's growing. And now there are certain elements of it that are in danger, like not having new makers.
Well, this instrument here.
Yeah, okay, well, this instrument, that's a different story. But like the modern shakuhachi, finding makers, that's becoming fewer and fewer. So that's something where we want to, one of my ideas is I would love to sponsor somebody to learn how to make shakuhachi with one of these masters and continue that. And so with me and the board of all of my shakuhachi player friends, that's what we want to do. And we want to create a really thriving community for people to enjoy shakuhachi.
Do you have a name for this new world order?
Yeah, it's the shakuhachi new world order. So
is there a sort of when people can expect to kind of see this community come to life? I think
that they'll see it really running very well and very big by 2030.
Okay, so it's in the building. It's a long-term project, and
because we're not thinking about. I don't want to just put something up. It's like, up here we are. We're a group, right? But rather have an actual physical location. Actually, have dedicated people who are on the the board of directors, as it were, the people who own the thing. Because I don't want it to be mine. I want it to be me and X number of people that all have the same vision of we love shakuhachi. And we want as many people to enjoy it who can, or who would like to. Because I think in more of the sort of the philosophy of Suzuki, like the Suzuki violin method, anybody can be a violin player. Anybody can be a shakuhachi player.
Thank you, Shawn, for sharing this. I think we'll have to have you back in a couple of years and to see how this community is growing and building. And thank you for keeping this alive. You mentioned before we started recording that some of these instruments, very few people still know how to play them. So hopefully you'll pick up some new students for those, so the tradition can stay alive. But maybe before we wrap up, could you perform one of your songs that you like?
Only if you try to make a sound.
I'll try to make a sound. So should we do my sound later or?
We should do your sound first.
They might run away though if the sound is.
Oh no, they'll stay. They'll run away after I start playing.
So I don't know if we have to. Or if we will shorten this passage, because it might take a while before I get anything out of this flute. But
not a problem.
Here we go. And to Skylar, who is listening, good luck to your ears.
So I'll give you as a little bit of advice about it first, right? Which is, so this is the blowing edge.
Okay.
We want to set this part of the instrument lightly somewhere in between the chin and the lips. So it's like about right here, right? And when you blow, it's a soft puff of air that goes over the instrument. So far, so good.
Okay.
That's the usual first sound.
Yeah, just the air blowing.
Yeah, and you can place it against the chin a little bit more. So, but you don't want to force it into the face. But there's something. There's something.
Do I need to put my fingers on the?
No, don't worry about anything of that. Just blow.
Do I need to blow into the
No, I want to blow more over the instrument. Kind of like blowing on a beer bottle.
This is hard.
So that, like, I have this video called The Ultimate Guide for Shakuhachi, like beginner's guide. And one thing I recommend for people is to do this like ooh shape. And then you think of the air coming out,
I can't get it.
Yeah. Well, I'll give you a free lesson. You can come out to my house in Nara, and we'll have some sake and shakuhachi lesson.
That sounds good.
Oh, there we go. See, but then when you get excited, there we go. There's the part of the sound. Yeah. Yeah. So, but when you get excited, then the sound goes away, runs away from you.
Well, even more respect for people that are able to do this.
Absolutely.
Because it is much more difficult than it sounds to get something out of this, rather than like a typical flute where you have the mouthpiece and you just blow into it and sound comes out, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is hard. I'll be annoying to the entire office later and just try to practice this in the
Awesome.
open office.
Good. All right, so let me play the piece Daha for you, Pounding Waves.
Thank you. Thank you for the beautiful performance and for the insights into the world of Shakuhachi. And we'll put all the links in the description so people can find you, reach out, and maybe, hopefully, some new interested students will reach out to you and start learning this beautiful instrument.
Good luck.
Thank you very much. This was Unpacking Japan. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. And we'll be back again next week. Bye. Thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as I did. Please hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out on future conversations. And we'd love to hear from you. Share your thoughts in the comment section down below. And if you enjoyed this episode, here are a couple more that we think you'll enjoy. Thanks again for your support, and we'll see you next time.